All right, everyone, I see that we do have a couple people joining here briefly, but I want to respect everyone's time, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. We want to thank everyone for joining today. I will be your host, Nick Cipolla, and we have our presenter here, Matt Kersse.
Hey, everybody.
Today, we're going to be talking about how time tracking affects construction profit margins, the true cost of paper-based and manual time tracking. The topics that we are going to cover today are going to be the hidden costs of time tracking inefficiencies and how to prevent them, how inaccurate time tracking impacts your profits, industry insights on the cost incurred due to inaccurate time tracking, and lastly, strategies to prevent construction payrolls from overpaying by up to 5%. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Matt here. So Matt, tell us, why do construction companies track time?
Yeah, Nick, and thanks for the handoff. And everybody who's listening, thank you guys for attending. Why do construction companies track time? Well, there's a multitude of reasons. I would imagine that we can all agree the first and foremost, probably most importantly, is to record hours worked, including start and end times, breaks, and overtime for your payroll. You want to keep track of how long it takes to complete tasks and use this information to improve productivity and project management overall. Now, time tracking also ensures accurate payroll processing and compliance with labor regulations. Some people have to remain compliant with many different organizations. So this is something that's actually very, very important, Nick. Going further on, by tracking task completion times, managers assess work estimates and employee effectiveness. By comparing estimated and actual completion times, managers can actually adjust future estimates as well for future jobs. Time tracking by task also ensures accurate workers' compensation premium calculations during your annual audit. So at the end of the year, when you have workers' comp audits, things of that nature, I would say, to tie back to the question, Nick, that's why construction companies really need to track time and do it properly.
Awesome, Matt. And one thing I forgot to mention, guys, sorry, I do apologize, but we have slotted this webinar for 30 minutes. If you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. If we have time, Matt and I will get to those questions at the end. I apologize for not saying that sooner. But Matt, here, just to get us back on track, why is accurate time tracking crucial in construction?
Yeah, and great interjection right there, Nick. It's crucial for a multitude of reasons. One, in construction bidding, two main factors are going to be considered, all right? The time needed for labor and the materials required, that's first and foremost. And if we have one of our coworkers, Gary, listening, he'll love that I said first and foremost. Accurate historical time tracking tools remove guesswork from future bidding in construction. Bidding is incredibly important. In construction, labor is the biggest cost that can vary. So as we move further, Nick, there was actually a study done in 2017, a study around 61% of standard construction projects were delayed. Why were they delayed? Well, over 90% of construction projects go over budget, really highlighting the challenge of budgeting for construction projects in general. And then lastly, Nick, time tracking impacts job costs, taxes, retirement funding, payroll compliance reporting, and as we just alluded to a little bit earlier, those workers' compensation calculations. So when you ask me the question, why is accurate time tracking crucial in construction? There you have it, Nick.
Thanks, Matt. So what causes inaccurate time tracking?
Well, there's many things that could lead to inaccurate time tracking. Just to name a few, Nick, paper time tracking, basically anything paper can cause inaccurate time tracking. Paper time tracking really lacks real-time punch-in, punch-out features, and it relies on employees to remember accurately what they did or what they recorded when they're clocking in or out, or what jobs they performed. This leads to guesswork. Now, I think we can all agree guesswork would probably turn into a money bleed. Although rounding time cards to standard increments may be legal in some states that our viewers or listeners may be in, it means you're paying for labor without receiving corresponding work for the money. What's a different way of saying that? It really just boils down to time theft is what it means, unfortunately. Now, Without a tangible record, there's no proof that the employee was present on the job site either. And paper time punch methods are unable to prevent various types of time theft, including unauthorized or extended breaks off the job site, engaging in personal activities during company time off the job site, and even falsifying records or time cards, unfortunately.
All right, so how does inaccurate time tracking affect the payroll costs?
I would say it affects it in a lot of ways, and unfortunately, it doesn't affect it in a good way. QuickBooks, Nick, actually did a survey. They surveyed accountants and bookkeepers, and they found that about 92% of accountants believe clients have a time theft problem. Unfortunately, and a lot of people aren't willing to admit this, but it's actually costing them an average of 5% of their total gross payroll. And I think you can agree, Nick, that's a huge problem, would you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so as we go further on, if that 5% of gross payroll is being costed to them, extra back office work is typically necessary to fix inaccurate timesheets before payroll processing, which again is a problem. You're spending more money to have somebody go back and fix these things that could have been solved to begin with without time theft. Now, according to the American Payroll Association study, widespread time card fraud, which is actually, Nick, about 75% of the companies that they saw, it increases their payroll costs by about 4 to 7% annually. So the people or companies that aren't willing to admit that they have a problem, this continues to grow and be more and more of a problem as the longer they let it go. Excuse me. I'm going to give you a quick calculation as well for all of our viewers. If you guys have a 15 employee construction company, let's say with about 12 people in the field, and you're overpaying your labor by 5% on wages than needed, the extra total labor costs annually for you guys is actually going to end up being somewhere just shy of $50,000. So when we talk about how does inaccurate time tracking affect your payroll costs, well, if you're a 15 employee company, give or take more or less, you're going to be affected about 50 grand. And that's a huge money bleed, as we alluded to a little bit earlier, Nick.
Wow, Matt, 50 grand, that sounds like a new work truck to me.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. You could go and buy something for your business with that money.
All right, Matt, so what are the drawbacks of paper-based timesheets?
I think a better question, Nick, is what aren't the drawbacks of paper-based timesheets? And this is something I get excited to talk about in the industry to people who are listening. So I'm really, glad that we have everybody here. Time tracking includes numerous manual, labor-intensive variables, which almost guarantees human error. I think you can agree, Nick. You and I are human. We both make mistakes in and out of our daily lives. It's pretty fair, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and paper-based timesheets depend on every worker accurately filling out the paperwork. Now, time-consuming approval processes, illegible handwriting, lack of integration with payroll, and the inability to have real-time updates before weekly submission are common issues with paper timesheets. Now, if we go back and say, paper timesheets depending on every worker accurately filling out paperwork, Nick, I think we can also attest to, and probably many of our viewers might get a chuckle at this, there was plenty of people that we knew in school, whether it was you or somebody else, that forgot to put their name on a test at one point or another. That's a really good example of not accurately filling out your paperwork. And you definitely don't want that in your clocking in, clocking out timesheets, for your business. The American Payroll Association, as reported by Business to Community, found that companies using traditional time cards actually experienced an error rate of 1 to 8% of their total payroll. Again, huge problem, Nick. Paper timesheets are unable to prevent time theft effectively, and rounding up and adding hours affects about 75% of the businesses that we hear about. With employees admitting, they actually admitted this, Nick, to the American Payroll Association, that they fudged up or messed up an average of 4.5 hours per week. There's no way to ensure compliance with break and overtime rules set by various entities for a lot of different places, right? Now, our viewers, you guys may be a part of any of these that I'm going to mention: union-based rules, contract-based rules, job-based rules, or even municipality-based rules. Some of you may have to comply with a multitude of these. So this is a big problem, Nick.
Wow, Matt, those statistics are pretty daunting. I think, as we both know, the construction industry is working off those pretty slim margins. So I could really see this, adding a ton of value.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about, the premise of the webinar, how does, construction timesheets and paper-based timesheets affect profit margins? Well, the drawbacks are exactly what we're talking about here. If you don't have a solution for it, this is going to be a big issue. So I would agree with you wholeheartedly, Nick.
So Matt, what are some of the alternatives to paper-based time tracking?
Yeah, it's a great question. And this is something I get really excited to talk about. There's many alternatives, and we have a few listed here. So I'll kind of go down from top to bottom. We have electronic time clocks for punching, electronic punch through cloud-based apps, electronic punch through mobile apps, electronic punch through mobile app with geofencing. Now I'm going to stop right here, Nick, after these 4 different sections of electronic punch in, punch out variables. Now, we want to move people out of the past, out of the Stone Age, no more paper, and move you to some sort of a software that's electronic. So this is the first part of your answer to your question, are there alternatives? The good thing is these 4 that I mentioned, a lot of times softwares, and I'll use eBacon's as an example, offer this in an all-in-one, kind of solution. So what do I mean by that? A lot of times you'll see with ours, for example, we have a time clock that's cloud-based. It is on a mobile app. You do punch in and out of it, and it does allow for GPS or geofencing. And what does that mean? It really means you can play Big Brother with your employees and see where they're at when they clock in or out of a job. As I move further on, there's biometric facial verification and fingerprint scanning. To give everyone a good example who's listening, I think everybody has an iPhone or an Android. Many of us either log into that phone with a thumbprint or a facial scan if you have an iPhone. Now, that's what the biometric verification is. Some technologies are moving that direction as well. Now, a lot of times we hear, this is difficult, my employees are going to give us kickback, we don't think we can implement this, it's just too much, my guys don't use technology very often. That's fine. We also have this, and many people have this, as work site time clocks that are available, and it can be permission-based or supervisor-led for the employees. What do I mean by that, Nick? I mean that somebody could have a work truck, supervisor could be there, the employees could show up, and they can clock in on maybe a tablet or a laptop that's provided that's cloud-based, or the mobile app through that tablet that the supervisor leads on the job site. So if your employees are giving you kickback, that's a really big solution that will remove any kickback to the employer by having one person in the field, supervisor-led, that can go and handle these employees and manage them with the new technologies that are emerging.
All right, Matt, so which electronic time tracking methods are the most effective?
Yeah, and it's kind of a loaded question. Everybody has a different thought process, but what we're seeing, Nick, in the industry standard, first and foremost, I'll kind of show you guys a reflection of the last screen. It's kind of a repeat. Now, nobody can say, hey, this is the perfect way to do anything, right? However, when we look at the industry and the way everything is moving, what we've seen is that the most accurate method seems to be at this time in 2024, as we move out of the Stone Age, the mobile app with geofencing and GPS. Again, that's the opportunity to play Big Brother with your employees and record things a little bit differently with an automated real-time report. So you can restrict punches to the job site location anywhere from 200 yards, greater or less than in many cases, whatever you want to set up for your own business. A simple way to task switch or job task switch during the day. And it also is going to really provide you, Nick, tangible proof or evidence for your GC and workers' comp insurance. And then lastly, as I mentioned already, the geofencing plus job task codes really equals, Nick, real-time access to activities and whereabouts. So again, that Big Brother mentality. That's what we're seeing as the industry standard being the most accurate method as we move into these electronic options that the future has been bringing us.
Yeah, the tangible proof for the workers' comp seems like that would be pretty important for the workers' comp audit at the end of the year, huh, Matt?
Well, yeah, you want accurate reporting, and a lot of times you see people that have a back office worker taking nothing away from them, and a lot of people listening probably have their own systems, which we totally understand. You've worked hard to build them, but if you don't have accurate reporting or even real-time reporting, it can be a huge issue. So yeah, I would definitely agree, Nick.
Absolutely. All right, Matt, so what information is essential to capture in an electronic time tracking system?
There's a multitude of things that are really pertinent to have for your business that you want to capture, Nick. So we'll start and just say that accurate record of time worked on the job site is huge. An accurate record of job tasks performed by the minute and the job site. And then as we go further, Nick, ensuring that the person punching in is the employee. We surely don't want Jeff clocking in for John or buddy punching and things like that, leading to guest work, rounding, things like that. What I can say is a good example of ensuring that it's the right person. You don't want Jeff clocking in for John because somebody went to McDonald's on a lunch break and then you guys clocked in at the wrong time, or somebody clocked the wrong person in. Again, huge problem. You got to go back and fix it. Your back office worker has a lot of stuff on their hands. The electronic time tracking system should allow for assigning job codes to work completed for each job. So not only do you want the right person to be clocked in, and a lot of times these softwares, Nick, offer a way to have your own personal identifier, whether it's a cell phone number that's specific to that employee, the last four of your social, maybe that biometric verification that we just briefly spoke about a moment ago. But the electronic time tracking should also allow for assigning job codes to the worker, work completed for each job, as well as the employee. Moving on, along with time tracking systems should integrate seamlessly with your payroll. This is huge. Again, it's going to eliminate the need for manual data entry of timesheets into the payroll software. We want to move away from paper and move into streamlined automated reports from a software that can do this for you, freeing up that back office person to just kind of oversee and manage these things instead of spending countless hours driving themselves nuts and wishing they never took this job. As I move forward, Nick, time tracking systems should capture essential details such as job site location, job name, and other pertinent information, as I mentioned, to assign hours worked accurately to the accounting system's GL and for your P&L reporting on each job. So what's essential information that needs to be captured? Again, Nick, there it is.
Absolutely, yeah. Definitely getting that information back into the general ledger seems like that would be very, very important for job costing, right, Matt?
Yeah, if you can have a line-by-line detailed report for all of this, especially down, to the employee with multiple lines of what they're doing, what they're clocking in or out, the job tasks, and all these different things. I would imagine, like many people, we would think it would increase profitability, right, Nick?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, Matt. So moving on here, how does accurate time tracking enable precise job costing? Can you elaborate a little bit on that for us?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So let's just talk about job costing at face value. Job costing at face value means tracking the expenses for a job and comparing those expenses to your revenue, as I'm sure all of our viewers know. But this is important, so I just want to repeat it one more time for everybody. Job costing means tracking the expenses for a job, comparing those expenses to your revenue, all right? Now, construction project expenses typically fall into three main categories, Nick: labor, materials, and overhead, all right? Now, material costs and overhead are often already recorded in your accounting records. However, labor costs require specific calculation for all the laborers on each job. So in the morning, somebody could be one job task, in the evening, it could be something completely different. Excuse me. To incorporate labor costs into detailed job costing calculations, time tracking must really capture the job name, the task being performed, hours and minutes spent on the task, and the employee performing the task. So again, if we had a GL, Nick, a custom GL that could really give you that information line by line down to the task, the employee, and the minute, it would be amazing, right? Accounting systems can't accurately calculate a P&L statement for a job without detailed labor costs. So these automated systems can do just that, Nick. So when you ask me the question again, how does accurate time tracking enable precise job costing? There it is.
Absolutely, which would enable, these construction companies to be able to bid these jobs more accurately.
Yeah, and bidding on a job and knowing exactly how much you would need in the beginning and accurately doing this is really going to, again, increase profitability, save time, energy, and then you can correctly bid on the jobs.
Perfect, Matt. Well, I appreciate you running through that. Thank you so much. Let's briefly here, let's just summarize the key points that we talked about here.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So just to summarize, we talked about a few different things. One of the first things we spoke about was the purpose for tracking time in construction. Well, some of those reasons were recording hours worked, including breaks and overtime, and it ensures that accurate payroll. It ensures accurate payroll processing, Nick. So those were some of the main key components to the purpose for tracking time in construction. As we moved along into the webinar, alternatives to paper-based time tracking. Obviously, there's a huge push in the industry for electronic punch through and automated systems using GPS geofencing, again, playing that big brother mentality where you can kind of watch your employees. So you stop that time theft issue and that 5% gross payroll problem. Web-based electronic punches, again, The reason that's important is you can go and upload things like your punches, even in a bad Wi-Fi zone, to the cloud. So you have accurate time punching, whether you're on a job site with great internet or Wi-Fi capabilities or not. One of the last things we talked about, Nick, was inaccurate time tracking and how it affects your payroll costs. If we go back to the beginning, I think it was like slide 2, if I'm not mistaken, Nick, wage theft averages 5% through that study through QuickBooks of your gross and total payroll. Huge problem, which we all agreed on. You shouldn't be bleeding 5% out of your gross payroll just because you're inaccurately time tracking. That's just a big problem that we can easily fix with automated versus paper systems. And then fixing errors in paper time cards is costly. You're paying a back office person to go and make these adjustments and have countless hours, fixing errors when it could have been streamlined, automated, and a report could have been generated by end of day. And then lastly, Nick, requirements for accurate construction job costing. Some of those were materials, overhead rates, and labor. So that was a quick summarization of what we talked about, Nick. I think all of this is really pertinent and valuable to people in the industry. And this is just stuff that we're seeing from studies, feedback from clients, and things that we can easily fix by adopting a new alternative, to your point earlier, Nick, going away from paper.
Awesome, Matt. Thanks for summarizing that for us.
Absolutely.
All right, well, we just wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit of a teaser on our next webinar topic. We are going to definitely be focusing on QuickBooks. We have definitely found that that is definitely the industry standard. Not saying all, but majority of the companies that we've come across are using QuickBooks. So we wanted to go over what is detailed job costing in QuickBooks. Why does detailed job costing in QuickBooks improve job profit and loss accuracy? And how can you incorporate detailed job costing into QuickBooks General Ledger? So that is just a little tease on our next webinar topic. It looks like, Matt, here, we do have a couple questions in the chat here. So it looks like we have a little bit of time here. So I'm gonna go ahead and read off a couple of these questions here for you, Matt.
Okay, shoot.
First question here. What if my employees refuse to use an electronic option?
Yeah, so going back to when the slide with the automatic and electronic options that we mentioned, so you have a couple different options for this, Nick. We hear this as an objection quite often from clients or calls, or maybe not so much an objection, but maybe a worry from people that are kind of skeptical about new technology. What I would say is this. You can do the option of a supervisor-led job site punch in, punch out with that tablet, laptop, however you set up your business. We're not going to tell you how to run your business. We can only give you the tools to make yourself successful with the new technology provided. So you can do it supervisor-led on a tablet or a laptop. Or I would imagine that every business, there's probably 1, 2, or maybe a few others that are a little bit more tech savvy than some. Start with those employees. Let them kind of spread that positivity and that new technology around to the others, and see if it catches on the way you're hoping. And then that would really kind of avoid any kickback to the employer if you either have a supervisor in the field that can address that for you and handle it at face value, or again, take those tech savvy people and let them spread that positivity. So that would be my answer to that question for our listeners.
Awesome, Matt. Thank you for that.
Sure.
The next question here I've got from a user, stating that they're a small company with 12 employees. The cost of an electronic platform concerns them. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, and I think if you're running a business, it should concern you. And that's a really great thing to ask. A lot of people don't ask that up front, so I'm glad that was asked. It should concern you. It's your business. You want to remain profitable and you want to become successful. So it should concern you. But if we go back to that equation, Nick, earlier in the slides, and the 5% gross payroll that's being bled out, I think the analogy that we gave for that, or the calculation rather, was a 15 employee company with 12 in the field. So if our guest here that has 12 employees, and they're bleeding money, I think the calculation, Nick, was about 50,000 that they lost by the end of the year. Wasn't that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So if you have a 12 employee company, for our listeners, and you wanted to adopt a software, I can tell you that, one, you're going to stop the money bleed with the software. It should concern you, and I don't blame you for asking the question, but more so, you're never going to pay $50,000 for an automated software platform for a 12 or 15 employee company, probably not even a 20 employee company, not even close. So if you want to have a solution you got to kind of embrace the future a little bit, but being concerned about it absolutely is within anybody's right. It's skeptical. You're moving into a new world, a new, platform. It's a big change from the stone age of paper till now, but you should be concerned. But with that calculation that we mentioned, do you want a better price or do you want a better product? I think I would rather, Nick, put $50,000 back in my pocket and have somebody else with a system automate my solution for me versus saying, hey, I got to fix this, I got to fix that, and I also lost 50 grand. That would kind of put a damper on my day.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, the reporting side of it as well too, if it comes down to, the workers' comp, the precise time and attendance tracking, that'll all get fed back into that GL. That is all kind of included into that electronic platform.
Absolutely.
All right, last question here. How often will you guys be hosting these webinars? And I'll go ahead and take this one, Matt. We're going to be hosting these webinars monthly. For the next QuickBooks General Ledger webinar, we are going to be hosting that on May 16th. So we hope that everyone on this webinar found this valuable and will please join us in the next webinar on May 16th. And I think we've got one last slide here, Matt. Perfect. Well, we just want to thank everyone for joining us today. We hope that you found some value in it. If any of you would like to schedule a 15-minute meeting with us to kind of discuss how specifically eBay can help improve your time tracking and help with kind of all the issues that we spoke about today, Matt and I would be happy to kind of schedule some time with each and every one of you.
Yeah, thanks, Nick, for the close there. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We really appreciate your time. We hope that some of this resonated with you and your business and maybe the direction you're trying to go. And yeah, if you guys want to schedule anything or have any questions, we'd be very happy to meet with you. So thank you, Nick, for the time and presenting. And thank you for our viewers.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.